Good morning. We are on our parasympathetic pursuit. Dr. Amber Kirk here. The body needs movement every single day. It doesn't need to be excessive. It literally just needs to move. When we move it and we stimulate the parasympathetic nervous system, we stimulate alpha brainwaves. And when we stimulate alpha brainwaves, what ends up happening is we become more relaxed. The immune system turns on, we get more creative brainwaves, we collaborate, and we end up being able to heal the body more efficiently. So, just like dogs need a good dog walk, right, Harmony? So do humans. So get out, do something fun. Woo! It doesn't need to be excessive. All the most recent research shows excessive exercise can actually stress the body out. So pick something fun. Swim, bike, walk on the beach, go for a hike, go cross-country skiing. So simple hacks for the parasympathetic nervous system are going to be things like belly breathing. Inhaling through the nostril, sticking the belly out, making a nice big fat Santa belly, and then literally relaxing. And so when you're breathing with the belly breathing, it calms the nervous system, which also boosts the immune system, the immunoglobulin A, really big spike in the immune system. Things that also hack the parasympathetic are things like humming or whistling, or if you're taking a glass of water, gargling some water. Also cold water. Cold water is a phenomenal hack. Whether you put your feet in a cold river or cold glacier-fed ocean, like here in my hometown Squamish, BC. We're right by Whistler, BC, in between Whistler and Vancouver. So cold water is a great hack. It's actually so cold that it calms the body. Otherwise, the body would end up having a heart attack because it kind of feels that way when we actually get that shock of cold water. So I'm really excited to join you guys for your B4BC online seminar. And I'm here to answer any of your guys' questions, especially about these simple hacks. They're great because they are more of a traditional kind of system that runs the body in a hunter-gatherer format. So they're really easy, they're really simple, and then I'll be adding some more things along the way. But I want to get you guys peaked and interested in the parasympathetic nervous system. So I'm here on my jet ski today, getting a little bit of parasympathetic pursuit because it brings me an immense amount of joy. The alpha brainwaves, like I mentioned earlier, that actually are stimulated during this parasympathetic nervous stimulation is literally that you start to branch into the alpha theta brainwaves, which is the athletic zone. The cool thing with the zone, the alpha theta brainwave zone, is you can hack that when you're grocery shopping, when you're driving your car, when you're creating art, when you're doing pottery, when you're painting, or you're just trying to get a wheelie going on the old jet ski trick here. Anyways, I'm gonna be checking in with you guys. So I'm signing off to go rip on this thing. Let's go.
Hi, Dr. Amber Kirk. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so glad you're here, all the way from British Columbia, where you have an integrative health clinic, I guess you would say, right?
Yep, exactly.
Do you want to give me some history and some background on the work you do with human bodies and souls?
For sure, Matt. I've been a chiropractor for over 20 years, and I've always been interested in integrative medicine. I've had lots of my own health challenges over the years, and so I myself have had to continually dig and gather more knowledge and keep following the research to kind of be as best to treating my own health issues, but also treating a lot of my clients. I'm a really big fan of education because I just really believe that if we understand how things work and consumers understand how things work, it makes it simpler and it makes it more affordable, and it's easier to transition into kind of new lifestyle and habitat changes that we kind of have to make.
Yeah, it's a crazy world today, right? What are a lot of the health scenarios and issues that you're seeing? What are people coming into you for these days?
A lot of common things. It used to be kind of over 20 years ago, it was kind of the standardized. Being a chiropractor, people would think, oh, backache, headache, my shoulder hurts. And over the years, as we kept going down kind of a more industrialized lifestyle, more people started coming in with things like very high anxiety, multiple injuries, gut issues, headaches, a lot of sleep issues. And people generally started looking and appearing tighter. So tighter in the front, tighter in the neck, tighter in the hips, tighter in the organs, in the digestion aspect, like in the abdomen, I should say, and tight jaws. And so it's, as much as I get to see people really regenerate their health, and it's really exciting because I'm kind of a last stop at times when people say, oh, I've gone to all these people, I don't know what's wrong with me. I'm kind of like the end of the chain. And a lot of the times there's very similar patterns to a lot of these people.
Yeah, all of that related to like gut issues could be related to not only what they're eating and how they're digesting, but also the stress and the anxieties, right? Like those are just kind of the lifestyles we're living nowadays, unfortunately.
Yeah, we just have our habitat and lifestyle choices have changed so drastically. And to be fair, it's very confusing. I myself have been very confused with even the health and wellness industry at times because there's so much coming at us and so much more coming at us. And yet I kept trying to get down to the, how does it work? I'm a mechanic by nature and I like to know how things actually work. And so as I kept breaking down back to the basic sciences and the mechanics and the biochemistry and the neurology, how does this thing work? It became clearer and more simpler. And so now that's what I'm trying to convey to people, because so many of these things that keep popping up with these symptoms that we're getting keep going back to this fundamental era of how we're running our bodies in this kind of industrialized, westernized lifestyle.
So different for everyone. You can't just be like, you need to go exercise, or, right? Everybody's kind of their own matrix or chemical mix, right? Of something. Chemical's not the right word, but everybody's got their own path and their own way. And so you're meeting them where they are, and you're like, okay, this could help or this could help, and something like that, right?
I find it easier when I think of people as organic matter within their own ecosystem, because ecosystems are varied and they actually have a lot of different variables that affect them at different times. So you're totally right. It became more clear as I went along in my practice that I just couldn't tell people similar things because it would kind of work for one and then not the other. And then when I got down more to the understanding of how to run the system electrically, people could start at a base of this is how this system actually works electrically, and then start to put in the pieces that they enjoyed. Some people enjoy going to the gym and working out, while other people absolutely love yoga. And so I started to notice that those different variables they could plug in once they understood how this system was actually working.
So when you say like the system working electrically, I mean, you're talking nerves and stuff like that. Do you want to expand on that a little bit?
So I kind of always kept thinking, as when I would look at people's like biomechanics when they'd come in, I would always think of like when you take your car to the mechanic and they would say, hey, your car looks like this. Like if you pulled in the car and the back end of the car was kind of listing to one side, I started to notice that we have a lot of asymmetries with human mechanics, and people would come in kind of listing to one side. And so when I started to realize that with the nervous system, which is like an electric system, you have two branches. And so you have sympathetic fight or flight, which a lot of people have heard of. And then there's parasympathetic. And parasympathetic is rest, digest, repair, heal, feed, breed. And I like to think of it as a big home. And when you have a big home, a lot of modern homes have a panic room. And in the panic room, it's very small, it's high tech, it's a safe area. And basically, when things go bad, you hightail it to the panic room. So when you're in the panic room, the body and the electrical system of the actual panic room is going to be on high alert. And so it's very expensive. And when you choose through hacking the electric system of the human body, you're always being presented with a choice. Do I want to go into the panic room, which I'm not going to last very long in there. It's very expensive to run, and it's very limited. There's lots of screens for sensing what's out danger-wise, but it's not a great place to live. Whereas when you look at the rest of the house and you've got this big, beautiful home and there's space and everybody can spread out, you typically have a different reaction where you feel this, I can relax, I can breathe. You typically then make choices of, hey, I'd like to eat this food. This makes me feel good. I'd like to have these people over to my house because they feel good. And people become more aware when they're in the bigger portion of the house. They then get more creative brain waves. And when we're choosing which portion of the electrical system that we'd like to entertain, whether we're going to dive bomb it into the sympathetic bunker of like safety, or we're like, well, no, it's okay right now. We're actually going to go into like the bigger portion of the house. The brain waves will change corresponding to which portion of the house or which portion of the electrical system you're actually choosing to utilize.
And so you're saying we choose, right? So ultimately we can, as long as there's that consciousness that we do have a choice, because, you know, a lot of people don't think they have a choice. They just are like kind of moving along and, oh, my body doesn't feel good, right? But we actually do have a choice, whether we want to go into the panic room, as you say it, or do we want to just be okay in this big house right now?
Well, and they go hand in hand, which is kind of frustrating because I was educated that the nervous system is this automated nervous system. We don't have a choice. It's just like, boom, it goes on and you're either in the panic room or you're not. And when you go back to true, hunter-gatherer tribe type situation, people that lived outside more predominantly, we typically had more of a parasympathetic nervous system going the majority of the time. And they do say within the studies that we should be like hitting the system kind of 90-95% of the time. And when we used to live in an environment like that, it was more apparent when sympathetic fight or flight was going to kick in. Somebody would come back from the watering hole saying, there's a saber-toothed tiger. We need to like hit the deck. We need to like get in the panic room. And so that was a system that was utilized like, you know, maybe 3 to 5% of the time. And it's incredibly taxing. It's very expensive to run and it's catabolic. So it's not a long-term system. So I find now that in our kind of modernized, industrialized lifestyle, there's so many sensory overloads to the human organic matter, to the electrical system, that it's consistently tripping this fight or flight, where we're consistently going down this path of fight or flight, and we don't totally realize it because we're not used to living in more of an outdoor, like tribal kind of scenario. And so it's one of those things that if we're not aware and it just keeps tripping and tripping, eventually that leads to things like anxiety because we just keep going in the panic room, and yet the panic room is stressful unto itself. And so that's where I keep seeing this pattern where, you know, the front of the neck, the shoulders rolling in, the hips are tight, the jaw is getting tight. Those are warrior positions. And then on top, that electrical system, when we're crouching down to be in our fight or flight, it continually pinched. It hits the dorsal vagus nerve. And so the vagus nerve is one of the longest cranial nerves. It's one of the oldest ones, and it runs the brain, the heart, the liver, the gut. So it has
it's stomach. Impact. It's in your stomach. Yeah. So that vagus nerve is what, when you get so much stress that you want to throw up, or you think the plane that you're in is going to go down, you want to throw up, right? Or a lot of people get diarrhea. People are just like, right? So that vagus nerve's right there.
Totally. High blood pressure, high heart rate, sleeping doesn't work, digestion doesn't work, your chest breathing. The body's getting dense, it's getting tight, it's pulling in. And so with this vagus nerve, there's two portions. There's the dorsal vagus and the ventral vagus. The dorsal vagus is the one that tucks down and says, let's do this, like fight or flight, we're going to survive. The other one is the ventral vagus nerve, and the ventral vagus nerve is getting an immense amount of traction right now within a lot of the research and the studies that are coming out. And that ventral vagus nerve is what we can actually hack through doing different activities to keep the body going back into the big portion of the house and going, we're going to be okay. The more we hack that electric system, the sensory bandwidth expands. We change from more focused beta brain waves of being in the panic room to more alpha brain waves, which is the relaxed brain waves. When you come home from work and you go, it was crazy out there, but it's going to be okay.
Yeah. Okay. So that person who's in and out of doctor's appointments, the doctor's saying, don't get COVID, you could die because you're dealing with cancer. You still have to come in and get your treatments. The leaving the hospital, the coming, the going, the waiting for the test results. Like, you know, somebody with a cancer diagnosis, breast cancer, is going to have those high stress, constant anxieties. What are some things that you would share with somebody who has a lot of shit that they should be like, fight or flight? Am I going to survive this? You know, that's like a real state for a lot of these, you know, younger, especially women. So what is it that you would want to share with them without knowing them or their history? What are some things that they can work on to keep that fight or flight in a good place, if that's possible?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's awesome to be able to pass this on because they're really simple, affordable, cheap hacks. And I try to get people to understand that if we say we're living more in that kind of hunter-gatherer tribal situation, being outside, it starts to get that bigger picture of, you know, we used to belly breathe consistently, and belly breathing is a great, cheap, easy hack where you're inhaling, expanding the lower belly out like a kind of big fat Santa belly, and then you're just relaxing. And every time that you're breathing like that, you're actually pushing the diaphragm down, which makes the diaphragm really healthy because it is muscle. You're letting the organs stretch out. And as that's happening, the organs are kind of getting squished and compressed, and they're getting a little bit of a flush, kind of like almost like a sponge would. The lungs are lifting, and that gives us better posture, which keeps stimulating the ventral vagus nerve to stay in that pattern. So belly breathing is a great one. Cold water, if you've heard of like any of the Wim Hof or ice baths, it's all this similar paradigm in the sense that you're stimulating the same electrical nervous system. The cold water, the body has to gradually get used to it. And so as it recognizes cold water and the blood pressure goes up, the body will trip into parasympathetic to vasodilate, to open up kind of the plumbing, let the body relax. And you just do acute, like short stints of like even a cold shower or going to a river or a lake. And you can put a cold compress on like your forehead or across your neck. Things like humming, chanting, singing, things like fasting, all the things that you feel that your body would go, it's
I don't have to digest. You know, and again, like when you talk about rest and digest, a lot of that happens while you're sleeping, right? Like imperative to our lives is sleeping really well, right? And that's what a lot of people aren't. They're busy, they're working. I've got 3 jobs and 2 kids. And did I just describe myself? I don't know. No, but, you know, you're just like, oh my God, my sleep patterns, like I have to sleep, right? So.
Yeah, and that's a great one because if you're up all day going fight or flight, there's all these things coming at me. The body, when it lays down to rest, you're supposed to do a smaller portion of digestion, but also recovery. And so if you're not getting your relaxed time to actually let the body repair things or recover,
reboot,
backlogging, and you continually to backlog. And so that's when the body itself will start to trip itself into fight or flight because you have a backlog of data that the body needs to actually get through. Meditation is another great one. I don't always pitch meditation kind of in the traditional format because I don't know many people who can sit quietly with nothing in their brain and sit in a position that's sometimes uncomfortable for people. So I like to promote the brain waves that go along with the things like belly breathing, the cold water, the laughing, the joy, fasting. And when you start to get brain waves that are more consistent in like an alpha bandwidth, it actually grows. When you go into meditation, it really helps to have a nice broad bandwidth of alpha brainwaves. That then leads to alpha theta. Alpha theta is the zone. So athletes know about the zone where it's like quiet and it's epic and
it's like slow motion. Everything's in slow mo. When you hit, it's been a while since I've hit a park jump, but when you hit that jump and you're spinning through the air, it's like everything is slow mo. You're not thinking about French toast. You're not thinking about your boyfriend. You are in your zone, right? That's the space.
And that's the alpha theta brainwave. And when you're in that space, you have the most awareness, and the sensory bandwidth is massive. So your brain is taking in all this information and things are just flowing and just becoming automated. And then when you push that further into more predominantly theta, you're now going into the meditative brain. And so I like to get my clients on a path of getting more alpha, relaxing, doing things, sparking joy, finding things that they really feel calming and fun. And it doesn't have to be calming as in you're laying down doing nothing. I ride my motorbike and I hack my alpha theta brainwaves because I like it. And I'm not going to give up my motorbike because motorbikes are awesome for some people. And so I just feel that
it brings you joy.
It does. And you can get alpha theta pushing your grocery cart in the store. You can get alpha theta reading a book. You can drive in alpha theta. They're just brain waves that we haven't really been exposed a lot of in our Western industrialized lifestyle. And it's a really easy, simple hack. And once you get in, all the things that you enjoy will start to make more sense as to what brain waves you're utilizing when you're doing those activities.
So it's like, kind of when you get into a space of like, I'm really happy and I don't know why.
Exactly.
I'm happy. I have no idea, but oh my God, look at that hummingbird, the colors on it, like nature can really bring out a lot of that emptying, right?
Absolutely. And there's like very little negative sensory input, like just the screens and the blue lights and the dirty electricity. And when you're in nature, the body calms quite quickly. And then it's usually the human who has to start to kind of go into the flow of how nature is, the resonance of nature. So usually city people with a beta brainwave of go, 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 and very hyper focused, it usually takes them a little bit longer to get accustomed to like the quietness and listening and just being more aware of what nature actually has. And then once the alpha bandwidth starts to grow from beta, we start to then get more comfortable and more aware and calmer. And that's why nature is like the best environment for human species to live in.
Yeah. So then, like when you said, it's almost like you're not going to have those triggers, right? Like you're going to create a fight or flight response when you should. Like you almost step out onto a curb and a bus almost hits you. That's the fight or flight where you're like, oh my God, you get a rush, right? But not like, somebody pulls in front of you in a parking lot, and you're going 1 mile an hour and you almost didn't hit anybody, right? So it's almost like we're all so trigger happy nowadays because of all the influx that we have. It's like one little thing sets us off, right?
Yeah. And once you get used to a certain bandwidth of brain waves and you don't know that they're actually brain waves, you're in it. And so you start seeing people kind of clump together in certain bandwidths that like the same things, or some people are acclimatized to certain amounts of stress. And then other people are over in a different bandwidth going, well, actually, like we'd prefer to relax over here. And we kind of value these, activities that we do because it really makes us feel good. And that feel good is where the parasympathetics are being stimulated, and you're hacking the brain waves. They're the brain waves that go, oh, I feel good.
Oh, this is life.
Exactly.
Yeah. So then really quick back to the electrics, right? I came in to see you weekly for a year especially during chemo. I felt like every time I'd go and sit in a chair for 4 hours and then I'd feel like I was just out, right? And so having that influx of chemo is affecting your nervous system, affecting, everything, right? So getting those, you did a lot of active release. It wasn't like you were just cracking my neck, but I was so surprised at how every week I needed my body to be stretched and moved when going through chemo.
For sure. Like those are really stressful events. And you know, there's lots of different stressful events too. Like I noticed like people going through divorce, their whole rib cage seizes up. And the thing is I've noticed over the years that if I like to think of the body as there's 100 trillion human cells that make up the body. And I like to think of them as kind of bubbles because it gives me a better visual for things like matter and density. And when the body is under an immense amount of stress and trauma, it kind of pulls in. So whether you have like a surgical scar, or if you have a traumatic scar from an accident, or if you're under an immense amount of pressure, the body pulls in tight, and that's the tension that people will feel. And so your body was stressed, and you had lots of different areas to choose from to be stressed, and the tissue becomes really dense and really solid. And so my job is to get people to start to realize, okay, what nervous system are you in? We do have a choice. We can choose our brain waves. And I'm trying to get, like when you were coming in, get your body to move easier, but to open and to relax, to let those molecules just have more space, and let the cells have more space, so that the plumbing and electrics are actually at an optimum, and so that you have a greater chance of returning to homeostasis.
Yeah, so tell me a little bit about homeostasis. It's kind of what you were talking about, right? Like it's the big part of the house. It's like, give me a little bit more of a definition of homeostasis.
Homeostasis is just a natural balance within an ecosystem. And so we find that when, you know, scientists go to parts of the world that really haven't been too touched by mankind, they start to notice these cycles where everything kind of goes together. Like things like right now, there's a big movement towards regeneration of soil, because we've noticed that if we have healthy soil, we have healthy microbiome, we have healthy plants, plants get more nutrients, humans get more plants, they get more nutrients, and it keeps the CO2 going back into the dirt, and it keeps the rainfall back in the dirt. And homeostasis is this really beautiful natural cycle where everything fits in, and the human body has a natural homeostasis. So, and it has like a natural pH. And so scientists know all these things, and it's a matter of, it's a bit more of a whole mindset. And when you approach an ecosystem with a whole mindset, you can see how the soil on the earth affects the plants, the humans eating the plants, the weather system, the CO2 going back into the plants, back into the ground. And you start to see that cycle the same as humans. Humans have the same thing with cellular health.
So on the inside and the outside, like we belong. We should be here. Like we should be able to find our place, like physically on this planet, and emotionally and energetically. Like,
yeah, the thing is, with the human body, we've traditionally taken more of a reductionist mindset and kind of put little parts of the body into little compartments. And yet, when you keep backing up, a lot of the traditional practices like Chinese medicine, Ayurvedic medicine, shamanism, they have this whole picture where all of the pieces fit together. And so it's nice to see that a lot of our modern research and studies are actually kind of going back to this whole model. There's way more medical doctors writing about these kind of things in the books that are like on the New York Times bestseller lists right now, because having this reductionist mindset keeps things separated. And that separation doesn't allow us to understand the ecosystem that we're trying to deal with. And so I find that when I look at it as an ecosystem, it seems to make more sense to me logically and rationally that how the pieces can actually all fit together.
Yeah. And then you can take that one piece that, you know, maybe somebody's neck is out as an issue, but then in actuality, maybe the thyroid medications they're on and they're not using their voice, and et cetera, right? Like it's part of the big picture, basically.
Absolutely. And one of the coolest things that a new study just came out showing that when we continually trigger the parasympathetic nervous system through the ventral vagus nerve, by changing our brain waves to more alpha and then getting more into theta, that actually starts to trip the left prefrontal cortex of the brain. Now, that portion of the brain is the most rational, logical portion of the brain. That then shuts down the amygdala, which is kind of our panic button. And when that panic button starts to shrink, we then are taking in more data, more sensory input, logically thinking about it, and being able to kind of decipher where does that piece go within the big cycle. And so because we haven't had an immense amount of research on these types of things, a lot of people's amygdalas in the brain kept growing, and these are panic buttons. So when we have things that are more fear producing, we lose the left prefrontal cortex stimuli of becoming logical and rational with it.
And so is that why, like on the note of, say, psilocybin and everything that they're doing with microdosing, like that's the idea with that, is to expand people's frontal or brain waves and then get that amygdala smaller?
Exactly. Right? Yeah. So there's lots of things coming out, like more plant type medicines. And what they're finding is that as we are trying these different things, it's relaxing the body. And as the body's going into that parasympathetic state, when we're gating more alpha brain waves and then going into theta brain waves, the awareness and consciousness level goes quite high. And they have found that the hypothalamus and thalamus, which kind of regulates what information comes up to the conscious brain and what stays down below, it's like kind of a trapdoor system. That trapdoor system opens and we get to look into the subconscious. The subconscious is running us 95% of the time, and we're only really consciously aware 5% of the time. So when
that's crazy.
It is crazy. And so when we're utilizing these types of products, and even when we're just doing like the belly breathing and the cold water and the humming and the singing and the joy and the laughter, we're actually being able to gain more presence, which allows then the alpha brain waves, then the theta, to go into the subconscious. And within the subconscious, we get unprocessed data that comes up. And so it's similar to like when you go on a flight and you turn your airplane mode back off, and all of a sudden your phone lights up from you being on an airplane and you've got 20 unread texts. So when you open up this part of the thalamus, hypothalamus in the brain goes, oh, we've got some data. We've got some things that we could actually look at. And you're more aware of, say, moments that, you know, maybe you ran your bike into a tree when you were 10 and it scared you and it really hurt you. And these things will come up for the conscious brain to say, wow, that really scared me. And when you start to look at that information, you start to put more of these pieces together. And as the body is allowed to scan these items that have not been processed, the body actually starts to relax more and unwind. And so we get more awareness of ourselves.
So then we can get rid of that though, right? Like when
100%.
these things come up, it's like, we don't have to keep looking at them. But once you're just like, oh, wow, it's almost like your own epiphany of like, that's why I'm afraid to get on a bike, is I crashed on it, you know? So you're able to then, you look at it and you get rid of it. That's what your brain's supposed to do.
Totally. It's just like having a cart full of items, and you have this cart that you weren't totally aware of, and you're going to the checkout and you're going to beep, you're just going to scan each item and go, oh, wow, that really scared me. Oh, wow, that was kind of mean what that person said. And as you keep scanning these unprocessed subconscious data files, then what happens is the awareness becomes greater because you don't have this backlog of data that's in the subconscious. So that when you go out into your day, you're that much more aware of, oh, that doesn't make me feel great. No, thank you. I don't want to be around you. And no, actually, I don't like eating that. And I don't like these lights. And so you start to get back to cultivating an environment for yourself that is more parasympathetic and eventually healing to the body.
And so you make it sound really easy by scanning items on a little thing at the grocery store. But, you know, we all know that the human mind and our psyches and everything are complex. And it's a journey, right? Like there's no real destination here. We're, you know, even if somebody hasn't dealt with cancer, they still might have a childhood trauma, or they still might have a divorce trauma or something where they're learning to trust again. And it's all part of our own ecosystems, right? And hopefully people can find somebody like you to help guide them and help steer them into like, okay, you can let go of those items in your shopping cart.
Yeah, and the cool thing is I was quite confused about a lot of this for quite some time. And as some of my health issues became more and more challenging, and I was living under more of an umbrella of chronic pain, I had to kind of go through a lot of these steps to realize, like, what is it? You know, being in an industry of health and wellness, I've tried probably almost everything, and yet there were a lot of things that I didn't really feel that I got like big bang for buck. And it wasn't until I really started to hack the parasympathetics and just stay focused on hacking the parasympathetics, I started to have an immense amount of information that started to come up from my subconscious, that I started to go, oh, wow, I didn't know that. And oh, wow, I didn't realize that. And oh, wow, this is so interesting. And I was able to scan items at a quicker rate because I made it more of a focus of big picture. I'd like to live in this portion of the house and not in the panic room. Whereas previously, I could definitely do some exercises and eat really well and take supplements, but I was living in the panic room. And so they really didn't have the bang for buck that I was expecting. When I switched over to the bigger portion of the house, I became more aware of foods that I really liked and foods that weren't really great for me. And as I started cutting out the stressors, whether it was people, places, or things, my body started to heal faster. So that became more of a mission for me to communicate to people, because I tried a lot of the other kind of variables, but I was driving the race car too fast and furious for those variables to have more of an impact, which they could have.
Got it. So then it is possible. And there is, like you say, something, you know, you hear this all the time, something for everybody, right? But I think we all have a nervous system.
Yep.
We all should get in touch with that, right? Like, especially nowadays, like one of the best, like you said, belly breathing. That's the simplest thing. I think you taught it to my son when he was 6, and he still does that.
The kids are the best. The kids come. This is the best part. The kids come to the planet in a predominantly theta brainwave, so they're hypnotic.
That's just how like,
they're perfectly at too. They're just downloading like crazy. Then they transition to alpha. They're creative. They laugh. They play. They do a lot of alpha brainwave stuff. And it's kind of more the adults who are like, hurry up, get your bag, get your shoes, like go, go, go. Like we got to get on the road. And so the crazy thing is children come belly breathing. And so as they become more stressed and they're having more like beta brainwave moments, their breathing changes from the lower to the upper. And so I love teaching this to kids, because kids are like, they literally within like minutes, they're like, oh yeah, I got it. I used to do that like 2 years ago. And so they're always closer to this than the adults are. And like you said, it's an electrical system that we all have. And so when you realize that a lot of the things that you actually enjoy, regardless of what they are, they're going to be tripping the parasympathetics. So you can keep doing these things, but magnify it. And the belly breathing is one of the biggest hacks that you can actually get into.
I love it. Wow. There's a lot of hacks here. And I think it's just all about all of us getting really interested in ourselves. And that's really what healing's all about anyway, you know? So I love that.
It's literally just like the whole concept that they're trying to get across with the regeneration of the soil. I just feel like we're regenerating the human organic matter, the ecosystem of that. And they're very similar concepts, and they're kind of simple, and they're kind of, you know, basic, but it's kind of how it works, and it's affordable, and everyone gets included in it. And it's just that bigger picture that kind of ties it all together.
And so nowadays, with COVID, have you been seeing COVID patients at all? Have you had people come in that are managing COVID symptoms?
Yeah, I've got more clients who have, say, had it and recovered. We don't really have too many coming in with COVID. And again, it's the same thing. Whatever people are being challenged with health-wise, I try to keep it simple and easy. And I'm just consistently pushing the parasympathetics, because as we start to belly breathe in cold water and hum and pursue joy and laughter, these things relax the body, which boosts the immune system. It decreases inflammation. It decreases the heart rate. It allows us to sleep. It allows us to digest food. And so all of these things are going to just keep boosting the vitality of that ecosystem that we all are.
And I just remember the very first thing when I came in to see you and was like, okay, the tests were positive, I have breast cancer. You were like, oh, check out this guy, Bruce Lipton. I was like, ooh, at the biology of belief. And it's something I recommend to so many people because just the title itself really leads you to believe that you can believe you have an opportunity to partake in what you want to see and how you want to see it. Right. And just the energetics of that alone, I feel like it was a paradigm shift for me, for sure.
Absolutely. And there's a ton of people like Dr. Bruce Lipton. And the cool thing with him is that he was the first to do stem cell research, and he was the first to actually remove the nuclei from the cell, and the cell would still respond to the environment, which was quite groundbreaking at the time because they really believed that the DNA kind of did everything. And he kind of looked at it maybe a little bit more like a library of information. And he was the one that discovered that this cell membrane, of the actual cell, is what actually responds to the environment, whether it moves towards something that's healthy and positive, or it moves away from noxious stimuli. It moves away from things that are toxic and it doesn't like. So there's a lot of people that are out there doing great work, and they keep promoting that it's the same ecosystem, it works the same, so that we can all start to kind of pick that concept up and actually hack that for our own health.
I love it. Gosh, I feel like I could talk with you on, and I just appreciate all of the insight that you brought. Parasympathetic nervous system. Is there any sort of what's your favorite movie or book right now that's a go-to, whether it's about healing or it's Will Ferrell or whatever?
Kiss the Ground.
Really?
Kiss the Ground. You know why? Because it's a new documentary on Netflix, and Woody Harrelson, it narrates it, and it literally is the regeneration of soil. And so I found it so brilliant because he took a lot of confusing information about agriculture and the environment and politics and farmers. And he kind of made this really nice picture of how the whole thing goes together. And so I really felt then, the end of his story, he's really into regeneration, and they talk about regeneration. And I thought, yay, the human body can regenerate too. And that's what such an honor is, to be able to watch people for over 20 years heal from things and regenerate the body. And I'm on a bit of a mission at this point to get this information out, because the stack of stress is so high for so many people, and I would get discouraged because our disease rates keep going up. And I thought, okay, well, I keep seeing people regenerate and heal from certain things. And so I feel like this is a bit more of a fast track now for us to actually get this going, the same as this Netflix documentary, Kiss the Ground. Yeah. He's trying to heal the planet by fixing the soil. And I was just really inspired that we can fix the soil, and we can fix our own cellular health.
And so you're on the same path as Woody. You're just trying to fix the human body.
On a little level.
I'd say you guys would probably be really good friends if you met. I don't know the guy, but he seems lovely and smart. So
friendships, as long as they're feeling good friendships, I'm open.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Dr. Amber. Really appreciate it. I love you. And I just am so excited that you got to share all this.
Yay, thank you. We can regenerate. We can.
Wow. What'd you think, Carrie? That was pretty cool, huh?
I thought it was amazing. Yeah. I have so many questions, but
I know.
Lots of belly breathing in my house. So I've got 3 boys, and I feel like that's something that I could really, I could do right now. It's just, okay, we're going to stop. We're going to belly breathe.
And lucky, yeah, right. And lucky for us, we have Dr. Amber live with us here today.
Hi, there you are. Woo! Look at you. You're all, it's winter up there, huh?
We got our first snow and Whistler 2 days ago.
Amazing. Oh, I love that time of year. It's beautiful. Well, thank you so much for sharing and for being here live with us too. I'm going to dive into some questions.
Absolutely.
Here, B, are you out there? Do you want to ask Dr. Amber something?
Yeah. Hi, Dr. Amber. First off, I'm with Meg. I could probably listen to you for hours. So thank you very much. I'm one of those jaw clenchers. I recognize it ever since my diagnosis, which was December 2018. I've been more aware, but yeah, like I always find myself clenching my jaw. So if you have any tips or tricks that we can maybe do to relax that, I would be so appreciative.
For sure. The jaw gets into a pattern of that clenching, like I was saying about how we kind of, it's kind of a measuring stick for when we feel stressed, the jaw starts to clench. The challenge is that it builds up over time and it actually trips the trigeminal nerve. And the trigeminal nerve is what alerts kind of the sympathetics. And so because we get a buildup of scar tissue, I remember just trying to like relax my jaw, you know, and just trying to let it hang. And in hindsight, I've now realized that the more that I pushed my parasympathetics, I actually started to go in and just like gently work some of the scar tissue. And so I do that for my clients. And the cool thing with the parasympathetic stimuli is tissue softens a lot quicker. So our industries, whether it was like chiro, physio, massage, we were all taught kind of to get into tissue and work it a little bit more to like physically break it down. And I found that by hacking my parasympathetics, I learned to soften tissue quicker. And so if you're, say, going through your jaw and feeling some really tender points, go for the most tender point because that's the highest density. And as you're belly breathing, you know, it's ideal, like if you're really just relaxing, if you're laying in bed, laying on your side, getting your belly to stick out and hold these points, and you can move the jaw as you're doing it. There's also muscles up on the side of the head that you can gently rub back and forth. But the key to tissue really releasing the most effectively is via the parasympathetics. And so it's amazing to feel a knot as you're relaxing, and you can even hum, you can have some nice music on. And as you keep going into those alpha brainwaves, you'll literally feel those knots just start to soften and dissipate. So it's keeping everything quite gentle and soft. And then it's kind of like a twofold. The jaw starts to release. You then stop tripping the trigeminal nerve, which actually pushes you even further into the parasympathetics.
The crazy you get all that, B?
The nice thing is once you actually relax the jaw, when the jaw actually starts to get looser, for me, it became a measuring stick. I could feel myself in environments where my jaw would literally start to get tight, and I would sense that. And I realized that it could be too much sugar, too much caffeine, certain people that were ripping too many beta brain waves, my jaw would start to clench. And then I was like, get away, go away, just turn and burn.
I have to say too that I've had a massage therapist who had a glove on once who did that type of work on the inside of my mouth and the outside. It wasn't pleasant by any means. But I found it actually very helpful for a long time to have somebody do that work while you did the breathing. It seemed to work for me for a while. So, but thanks for all of your insight on that, Dr. Amber. I'm going to jump into another question from our audience. Nick, well, so she's wondering, so she's developed a pattern when you have either naturally or otherwise, maybe it's ongoing trauma and something maybe that's been like a lifelong thing, and it's harder to feel safe and to trust and to be outside of the fight or flight response. So I think we kind of talked about this a little bit, but I think what she's saying is she feels like she's stuck in the the fight or flight response. And so everything that you're talking about, breathing, so is it routine that's going to help her pull her out of this trauma, if you will, and being stuck in that uncomfortable room?
100%. Yeah, it's a priming of the nervous system. So it's kind of like if you're a driver of a very, high-end sports car and you just keep focusing on, like whether you have good fuel or like the mags or the pinstripes. That's kind of that fight or flight where you're kind of externally looking at things and you're kind of reacting to those. Whereas when you keep hacking the parasympathetics daily, you start to become the driver of the car. So you learn to finesse the gears, you don't ride the clutch. And so like even right now, David Attenborough has a fantastic documentary about the environment again and his experience. And at the 20-minute mark, he literally goes to New Guinea and comes across a tribe who's never been exposed to the outside world. And I was so elated because the tribal members were belly breathing the whole time and they had 6-packs. And so I've never seen a human that is that defined muscular wise with a belly breathing pattern continuously. So it's kind of a super hack if you can get the belly breathing going, the singing, the humming, the things like sauna, infrared mat, stuff like that. You just have to push it and make it your own main focus throughout the whole day. That's when that system gets primed and you start to get the perks of all these benefits that you're looking for.
I'm going to add one more thing here from Nick, and it actually, I feel like it applies to many of us, but it's basically around hormones. So in some way we feel like maybe, without blaming them, that the hormones or the medications that we're on that are stopping the hormones or supporting the hormones, like all of this around hormones, and that over our lifetime seems to kind of affect us, right? So how can we not react to our hormones? Is it just having that understanding? And anyways, Nick was feeling, and I'm feeling that with her, that hormones drive a lot, if anything, our thinking patterns, our choices, even drive some of our habits. Would you say that we can blame hormones for that, or are we just getting sucked in?
If you're super stressed, yes. And then privately go behind in the closet and be like, okay, how can I manage this? Yeah, it's one of those things that most systems get out of sync when you're chronically in fight or flight, because it is so catabolic and you just burn through cells faster. So cellular replication goes through the roof, and that's what aging is. And so when you can slow it down, you can start to get a little bit more of a balancing within the endocrine system and get a little bit more balancing with the hormones. It's the same thing. The more you keep pushing those parasympathetics, you can just start to get a more of a calming effect. The other thing too that I've learned to use is even with hormones, like even with like menstrual cycles, is if I'm having a bit more of a hormone spike and I'm feeling like more anxious or I'm feeling that anxiety, I've learned then to use that as like a alert or trigger that I need to push a little bit more into the parasympathetics with a little bit more consistency. And then going into the alpha brainwaves and then into theta, you can go into the subconscious and use that trigger to get something else out. And to be honest, if you actually just become like a master ugly crier, it really drastically changes the subconscious. So I've mastered it almost to the point that I could put my head in my handbag and have a good hard cry and feel a lot better after that. But it's just getting back to that really calming, stable environment that you can create for yourself.
I like that. It sounds like it actually feels good. A good ugly cry. And that's a hard thing to do. I mean, we're told to be strong and be tough. And I feel like it took me a long time to learn how to cry. So thanks for reminding us that it's good to do. Jermaine, I know that you have a question for Dr. Amber. Do you want to hop on and ask her?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everybody. It's nice to see everyone. So yeah, hi, Dr. Amber. I'm super happy to see you.
You.
My question, I'm going to see if I can articulate it well. So I recently found out I have like severe advanced arthritis in my hip and apparently degenerative disc disease. And I just found this out this week, so I'm just working on it. But I think it's related to the treatment and the hormone stuff that Megan and everyone was just talking about. My question is like, do you feel like that's something that is possible to regenerate? Like I still am maintaining hope that I'm like not just because I'm 36, I'm like hoping this isn't just like the end of my active life. Do you feel like it's something that's possible to regenerate, or ways to do that, or how to move through this chronic pain that I've basically been in for a while and didn't even realize how serious it was? So I don't know where there's a question in there. Yeah, do you feel like that's possible to regenerate? And what would be some ideas on how to do that?
Absolutely. That's a great question. I personally had severe degeneration within my lower lumbar spine and disc for 24 years. The universe irony, I'm the chiropractor with severe low back pain that's chronic. And so anyways, that was my challenge. And so this is what pushed me into understanding this stuff to the level that I understand it, because I had to get myself out of that situation. And I was teetering on the surgery route. And I just have such a strong belief in the human body for some reason. And so I look at degeneration, whether it's like disc or atrophy of muscles or hips, as rust. And I'm a mechanic by nature. I have a lot of mechanical motors, and lots of times you can get stuff moving. You kind of got to feather it a little bit. It needs a little bit of oil, a little bit of grease. And so when clients come into me with things like you're speaking about, I start to go into those areas and I just start to get them to move. And again, the craziest thing that happened to me was the more I hacked the parasympathetics, tissue would start to just kind of crackle open, and its density. And so when you feel that thickening in the hips, the joint has no option but to grind into itself. And so when you go, okay, well, maybe if I just start to pull apart the tissue, just like a really tight ball of yarn, and you just start to breathe into it and let it go, the surprise is what starts to come out of it. And so subconsciously, there's an immense amount of information that is actually within these dense areas of the body. And so I've actually now been able to increase disc space. I've been able to get more circulation movement to my joints, and my x-rays are improving. And so I know it's because of the parasympathetic system. I've slowed it down, calmed it, let it go into its healing mode. And it just made me realize how far off I was before, utilizing all these external things, thinking that it was helping. Yet if I had become a better driver of my vehicle and then looked at, my fuel and the mags and all the rest, you can get into that stuff, and it makes you feel amazing, because that density is what drives the subconscious, and it gives us anxiety, because it's this information that's trying to come up. And when you let it come up, the body starts to go, and it starts to release.
So, I feel like I'm going to send you a lot of love, Jermaine, because I know how much you love nature and skiing, and you're a badass athlete. And I'm just going to send you a lot of love for that one. But I think this leads us into another question that somebody asked. It sounds very similar to like somatic work. Would that be right, Amber? Because a lot of people are interested, like people want to know how can they, what's the title? Because obviously going to a chiropractor, that's not exactly what you're doing. So for all these women everywhere in different areas in the US and whatnot, Canada, where can they find someone similar? Is there a title that you can direct people to look for this type of release and assistance with their parasympathetic and relaxing their tissues, all of that?
Yeah, good question, man. The cool thing is different branches of different therapists utilize kind of this understanding of how the system works. So things like some chiros that do say like energy work, or they know about the parasympathetics and the belly breathing. That's a great avenue. Massage therapists, visceral manipulation, visceral massage. Some osteopaths get into this. Reiki, cranial sacral, all of these things are hacking the parasympathetics. You just need a turbo hacker. So ideally, if you hear of someone in your area that they're like, oh, they do this amazing magic, they're tuned in, they do energy work, it just needs to be someone who has had quite a lot of experience, because you need someone that is very familiar with tissue and what it feels like and where they're being drawn to on the area. And the therapist themselves needs to be incredibly tuned in. And ideally, I always joke that if you find a therapist who is like messed up and got out of it, that's a really great start, because they've had to hack their own stuff. So that's kind of what I look for when I actually try to refer people on, is experience and someone who's actually had to get out of their own deep, dark hole of health issues.
Okay, so there you go, everyone. Try to find that. Referrals are also good too, but I think those are some good insights. And yeah, craniosacral is, if you could find a really good craniosacral, or the somatic work, all of that's just incredible.
And you need to, you need to get a result. Like, you need to be like, wow, that was great. And you need to walk out of there feeling light or feeling high with like vitality. Then you know you're going on the right path. Those are the people that are like cranking up the voltage within the brain waves you're looking for.
Awesome. We got time for one more question. Carrie?
Yes. I would love to know, just yin and yang, is there a healthy balance between the parasympathetic and the sympathetic? I mean, it sounds like from the conversation we're having, we want to try to always be activating our parasympathetic. Is there a healthy balance between the two?
Yeah, for sure there is. I mean, like, neurologically, we are predominantly more 95% parasympathetic. And so when I realized that when I started to hack into the parasympathetics, I was so off. I'm in the health and wellness industry, and I've bought all the products, I did all the treatments, and yet I still came to a grinding halt with my chronic pain. And it baffled me. I couldn't figure out what I had actually missed, because I spent a fortune on it and time. And I realized that my balance was drastically off. And so the thing is the more we keep going back into parasympathetics of being more outside and breathing properly, kind of more like tribal people actually breathe, walking properly with a push mechanic, not a pull mechanic, you start to see how imbalanced most Western industrial lifestyle is. And so I think you have to aggressively push the parasympathetics as much as you possibly can, and you will start to find your own balance within it. And you might have the same realization that I had, that I maybe had like 2%, 5% parasympathetics actually occurring, because I was so like busy doing that is a sympathetic drive.
I feel like I have so many more questions, but we don't have a ton of time. Where can people find out more about you and your work, and more information about the stuff that you're sharing?
I'm actually on Instagram at dr.amberkirk. And I always laugh because I put so much information on there. I have like one massive run-on sentence. And what a lot of people don't know is I read an immense amount, and I'm taking all these pieces that I'm talking to you guys about, and I might combine 4 books, 6 books. I might combine 5 new research articles. So my Instagram has a ton of information on it, and it's not, you don't need to follow it. You can just look and screenshot things. So I'm always trying to just get the information out, because I was at such a loss, and I'm an avid seeker and a generator. And so I put all the information on there, and feel free to message me at any time on Instagram. And I for sure will pass on what I can to you guys.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Kirk. We are so appreciative of you.
Yeah.
That was
Thanks,
amazing.
Amber.
Thank you.